Good morning and good evening, everybody. Welcome to Peer-to-Peer UK Hong Kong 22 Symposium and our 8th and final session, Art at the End of Language. I'm Lindsay Taylor, Curator of the University of Salford Art Collection and one of the organisers of Peer-to-Peer, along with Sarah Fisher from Open Eye Gallery. Before I pass over to Matthew Pendergast, who's our chair of this session, there are just a few housekeeping rules to share with you. Firstly, this session is being recorded and will be added to the Peer-to-Peer website later today. Secondly, we actively encourage questions and comments from the audience. You can submit these through the chat function at the bottom of your screen, and we will be monitoring these, and there will be time at the end of this session to put them towards the panel. And thirdly, can I encourage you to share on social media using the hashtag peer-to-peer-UK-HK2022. I'm now delighted to hand over to Matthew, also known as Gas, who is chair of this session. Over to you, Gas.
Hello, everyone. Hello. So I'm also going to shortly hand over to Teresa Kwong, who is here from Hong Kong Art Centre, who is kind of co-chairing this with me. We collaborated together for peer-to-peer. So I just wanted to say we'll have a little section at the end for question and answers. So do make a note of any questions you have for the panelists as we go along. So yeah, I'll hand to Teresa next, who's going to sort of set the scene a little bit, mention a few key words from our kind of pre-discussion we had last week, and then we'll go around the artists who will share their thoughts with you. Teresa. I think your microphone is muted, Teresa.
Okay. I think, yeah. So I'm so happy to be part of the symposium today, and also, and I think maybe I think that may be a good idea, to have a quick moment for each of us to briefly, introduce who we are. So let me start first. As what Glass said, I'm from Hong Kong Art Centre, which is a contemporary art center that committed ourselves to, which is a multi-art center, committed ourselves to promote contemporary art and artists. I'm the program director there, and this is our first time to be part of the peer-to-peer program, and we're very happy because I think the core value for our center and what we believe is about cultural exchange and also cross-disciplinary. So starting from this March, we spent a lot of time with our UK partner and Glass from the Castlefield, and we hope to do a project together, engage both UK and Hong Kong artists that try to explore the possibility between the visual arts and also performing arts. So who would like to speak next? Maybe another UK artist. How about John?
Hi, I'm John. I am a artist based in Greater Manchester and Todmorden in the UK. My work is...
John, sorry, can I pause you for a second? I'm gonna share the screen. I'm just gonna share a couple of images with the audience of your work as you guys introduce yourselves.
Yeah, of course.
So everyone should be able to see some kind of scurry green and pink people. Is that working?
Yeah, I can see that.
Brilliant.
So yeah, I work, I'm quite interested in the idea of world building and storytelling. So my practice tends to involve telling a story over multiple platforms. So this is a recent body of work that I've been working on. That's taken the form of a choose your own adventure style computer game, which is this is a still of. A comic book, and then there is a live action version in the works. It's going to be on display at the Lowry in November. So yeah, lots of I'm very interested in exploring an idea over multiple platforms. So whether that's comics, print, digital, live action, ceramics, multiple platforms to see what happens to like a character or environment over them. That's me.
Thanks, John. Maybe if we go to Florence next, would you like to just introduce yourself, Florence? And I've got a couple of your images here as well.
Hi everybody. I'm Florence. I'm a performance artist based in Hong Kong. I'm also one of the co-founders of Per Platform, which is a new live art platform based in Hong Kong. And the few images I'm showing right now are actually the collaboration I did with Nicola for the peer-to-peer project. This time it's a collaboration between Per Platform between Hong Kong and also the University of Art in Salford art collection. And so it's a kind of a new challenge for me this time, because usually I work mostly with physical materials and also with improvisation. So with the digital exchange we have today, it's like trying to learn a new a medium or a material for improvisation. So yeah, so I think we have a few images. The first one we're showing here now is one of the scenes from, we have like a 2-channel video this time, and it's a documentation of the process of us, Nicola and I, coming up with a performance, virtual performance, and this was one of the screenshots of as the process that we had, and we were sort of figuring out some technical difficulties, and somehow that kind of thing became performative in a way, and yeah, and that led to the performance we did together. So that was one of the examples. Yeah, I'm done. Thank you.
Perhaps Nicola, do you want to go next?
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Nicola Dale. I'm also based in Greater Manchester in Stockport, and I work between sculpture and performance. And thinking about edges, I'm actually really interested in the edge between the two of those and how thinking from one discipline can inform the other. As most visual artists will attest, obviously, I'm extremely interested in what things look like, but also how they feel and what is happening to our sense of touch. This is another still from the piece that Florence and I made. And for someone who is so interested in what is happening to our sense of touch, who loves to make things, perform in the live arena, it was a real challenge trying to work out how far the idea of touch could actually reach when you can't be together with the person in the same room or even on the same continent.
Thank you, Nicola. And maybe Juliana, do you want to jump in at this point and just say a little bit about Per Platform?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Juliana. I'm the co-founder of Per Platform. So Per Platform is a very new and young organization that is dedicated to live art events in Hong Kong. There's actually a lot of interest in performance arts and live art exhibitions in Hong Kong, but there hasn't been a lot of platforms or organizations especially dedicated to this form of practice. So Florence and I are very lucky to have found this niche, and also very, really enjoying all the supports that we get from the community. So what we do is annually we put on exhibitions, festivals, and then yeah, that's about it.
Brilliant. So last of the artists, Lazarus, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Lazarus Chen from Hong Kong. I'm a new media artist that's mean that I like coding and programming and mathematics and science. So this time I just built up my meta-human as an alternative like avatar Lazarus to help me to do performance in UK, both in UK and Hong Kong. So maybe today the topic is art at the edges of languages. We will talk about what is the meanings of like mathematics, like numbers and code as a universal language, or like simplifications of language today later on. So yeah, maybe we can move on to the next artist.
Thanks, Lazarus. So I think that's all the artists have introduced themselves now. So I think we'll just come back to me and Teresa, unless Lindsay, you want to say anything more about your part in peer-to-peer with these guys.
I suppose I'll just say a few words as being here as one of the co-commissioners, and just that it's been an absolute pleasure to work with Per Platform, and for us it was great to really want to support and work with a young organisation like Juliana's just explained, and I'm just delighted to co-commission the work, and I suppose want to thank Nicola and Florence, but also mention that the work will be coming into the University Art Collection as a legacy of the project. But anyway, that's all I have to say, so I'll hand back over to you guys.
Brilliant, thank you. So as I mentioned at the beginning, Castlefield Gallery works with Hong Kong Art Centre, and the image you can see on the screen now is from an event that took place at Castlefield Gallery. There was also an event at Hong Kong Art Centre. I guess we had lots of ideas when we were introduced by peer-to-peer, but one thing we really wanted to do was do something, as well as doing something for the website, we also really wanted to do something AFK, away from keyboard, or IRL, as some people say. So these are a few pictures of the event at Castlefield Gallery. Here's Omid performing, covered in language. You've got Persian, Chinese, and English there. And one of the reasons why we wanted to do something in the flesh, as it were, is because we were really interested in this idea of making use of technology like Zoom, these platforms that enable us to communicate wide and far, but also we were interested in how that could support something happening live and in person, and how those two things might kind of support each other. So there's one more image of the event at Castlefield Gallery. Kelly Jane Jones and Lazarus there. So I'll hand back to Teresa now, who's just going to say, sorry, I jumped ahead a little bit earlier. I missed out the introductions, but now finally we'll go to Teresa to sort of set the scene a little bit for today's discussion.
Okay, thank you, Glass. Yeah. So okay, maybe we could start first, start a discussion with some keywords, because all of us has been get together last week again online, and we have, some very interesting discussion. The topic this time is called Art at the Edge of Language. So, from our own introduction earlier, I think the artists already briefly talked about different form of language that they have engaged. Some of them are using movement, some of them are using computer coding, etc., etc. And we find that it's digital. In a digital era, coding and a digital could be a form of language. It's also a universal language as well. So maybe first of all, we could briefly talk about how we see the relationship between the digital and the art. For example, on one hand, it seems digital could help us to make art easier and maybe more accessible. But on the other hand, we both think art, it's more like sophisticated or something like that. So some of us did mention that maybe digital somehow it's reducing the impact of art. So maybe is any of you would like to say something about these interesting dynamic between the digital and the arts?
Maybe Nicola, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I am hugely ambivalent about the digital world. I use it every day, but I'm also very wary of it. And in terms of being at the edge of language, I think one thing that in working with Florence, I became very aware of was that when you're working on a platform like Zoom, it doesn't, in some ways, it doesn't really matter what you're saying. The point of Zoom behind us, the baseline point of Zoom is to collect data. It's not about meaning. It's not really about communication either, even though it is a communication platform. It's about collecting all the stuff that's going on in the background. So in that sense, platforms like this want to keep us on and keep us talking, but they don't really care what we say. in addition to that, because Florence and I both have an interest in working physically, this is actually a really bizarre program for us to try to do performance in, because we are both people incredibly invested in touch and being together in a room with other people. And obviously, although it looks like we're sort of in a room together digitally online now, of course we're not. So many things are missing from this. And so being aware that art is this incredibly rich, complicated, difficult discipline, what was interesting to me in using a platform like Zoom is that Florence and I, also because of language issues, like spoken language issues, we had to kind of strip everything right down back to the basics. And so the performance that we made is actually in some ways really, really simple, asking each other very, very basic questions. Who are you? Where are you? Because how can you possibly know who and where someone is when you're not with them in the room? They're just a digital flat image. There's no smell, there's no taste, there's no sense of them being there. And so although it was fantastic that we were able to collaborate at a distance, it also threw up these difficult questions that had to be reduced to utter simplicity. And I think, again, that's what fascinates me about the digital. It's like a sieve. It needs to reduce everything to some very, very simple still baseline, even though obviously we can talk around complicated questions around it. It sort of leads you to do that.
Thank you, Nicola. Yeah, it's very interesting across the 4 artists that we've got with us here today. We've got 2 artists who primarily work in person, physical performing, and then 2 artists. So that would be Nicola and Florence. And then we've got John Paul Jones and Lazarus Chan, who both work with the digital and actually create, especially their recent work, avatars, kind of versions of themselves, characters based on their experiences that kind of live in virtual environments. So there's kind of quite an interesting difference between, I guess, 2 pairs of artists here. So maybe we could go to Lazarus next. I don't know if you want to kind of say a few words.
Yeah, and maybe back to Nicola, respond to Nicola first, and maybe digital world is about, you talk about reduce, but in my perspective, it's about deconstruction. So in the digital world, like generative art, we started from a really simple algorithm or code or like a rules. But the result are complex. The result could be generative, could be sophisticated. But the problem is the process, the progress, or like what you just mentioned about, like what is behind Zoom? What is the logic during we having a meeting like this? How they treat content. So maybe nowadays a content creator on social media, they all talk about, is it good to provide content for like social media platform like Instagram or TikTok or whatever it could be. So in my perspective, so digital art could be started from simple, but and the result could be sophisticated. It just how you use it. So if you are an artist, you can make it sophisticated, you can make it complex, you can break all the process, you can break down all the progress, and you can digest each steps and find out the meanings of the steps. So that is what my understand in the digital world, maybe. So maybe we can move on to the next artist.
Thanks, Lazarus. Yeah, John Paul Jones, I don't know if you want to jump in there.
Hi. Yeah, I guess for me, I just see it as another medium. I think, like anything, there can be plus sides and downsides to it, but I don't think it's I don't know. I think it just depends on the individual and how they use it. I think there's some really, like, it's not a new sharing stuff digitally. I guess it's been going on for like a long time, and I think that there's massive positives I see in it. Somebody that finds, I guess, social situations quite difficult and anxiety inducing, the idea of being able to share stuff like this, I find it opens a lot of doors and makes it a lot more accessible in terms of sharing or attending things. But in relation to a means of production, so making artwork or applying it to my practice, I really just view it as another medium, another platform to experiment with, because I guess like the idea of like the data collection, for me, that goes back to not necessarily the platform or the medium, but the societal structure that it's being used in. So for me, that would always go back to capitalism, this idea that the urge to commodify absolutely everything that we're doing. So whether that's communicating, sharing pictures, whatever it is, like I guess that's the same could be said for like telecommunications. That is about selling telephones for people's houses rather than communicating. I think for me the issue would be with capitalism rather than the actual platform itself. I find it a really, I guess, like liberating medium to work with. Yeah, I guess like a lot of my work is like informed by old like cyberpunk ideology and this idea that like the web was going to make global communication possible, and like to like transcend like boundaries and barriers, that we could start communicating with everybody. But then obviously there's other ways that can be, as a structure, be taken and used in, I guess, like more sinister or alternative methods.
Thank you, John. I think you put monetize and commodify together, maybe. But commoditize is a good word. Maybe we should just use that in the future. So Florence, I don't know if you wanna jump in there.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think I'm gonna go back to, because Nicola started with a more like a touch physical perspective, and then Lazarus and John, you're both digital artists, so obviously there are more of like you're more you have more knowledge in that area, or like you have more knowledge on how to use it as a medium. And I'm also quite a physical artist, so I have to go back to the other perspective. But then I would say that technology, or like the digital world, it's perhaps also just an extension of the human body, like how Donna Haraway's idea of the cyborg. So it's about learning how to use that and how to treat it as an extension of the body in terms of communication, or like how further you can reach out to connecting with people, even though like from a performance artist perspective, like we discussed before, that it's with performance festivals traditionally is very much about bringing together artists physically from different countries internationally, and then they gather for a week and they have a very intensive 1 week of presenting artworks. But even more than that, it's a lot about just spending time together and living together and doing everything that is sort of outside of art, and just sharing time and the communication outside. And that's how the community is being built and strengthened and is growing. And I think for me, at least, it's a very big part of artistic creation, at least for my own practice. And of course, through the digital platform, it allows certain communications and connections to happen when it's becoming not really accessible anymore, but there's still so much of that physicality, or like that human sense that cannot be achieved during the communication. So yeah.
Nicola.
So I guess, thank you.
Sorry,
Thank you,
Florence, I
Florence.
just jumped in at the end there. It's just made me think about the fact that one difficulty, and I know I keep going on about the difficulties because I'm trying to work this out in my own head as I'm going, but one of the real difficulties about trying to perform together online is that if Florence and I had been together in a physical location, I am really, really positive that we would have spent quite a bit of time together, both silent and still. And it is very hard to be silent and still on digital media. It's just weird. It makes you want to talk and move because that's what it needs. That's the energy it brings to something. It needs you to be doing something because that's the essence of the medium. Whereas so much of performance actually, and you know, idea generation, all those things, they require the kind of space and silence and stillness that a digital platform really doesn't encourage. I mean, maybe there's a gap in the market there. You know, maybe there needs to be some sort of digital platform where you don't speak and you keep very still and nothing really happens. I mean, maybe that's an idea for another performance, Florence. We just don't do anything. We just stay as still as possible. But yeah, it just struck me whilst you were talking. That's it's another edge again, isn't it? And I guess that's what artists do. We whatever medium we use, we try to push it to the edge of what that medium can do. Whether it's, as Lazarus was saying, getting increasingly sophisticated in how we code and how complicated the work can be, or at the other end of the spectrum, it's kind of stripping it all away and actually just using the medium just in and of itself, with nothing there at all.
So one thing we touched on already is this idea that maybe the digital and art are kind of, there's a sort of antagonism there that can't be resolved. And so I guess, I don't know, do you feel that's the case, Nicola, that the digital in some way causes art problems? It kind of, yeah, I don't know if you want to speak to that more.
I think it does for myself as an artist, because I'm so invested in physicality, touch, presence, and also I am a cynical person when it comes to the digital world. But you know, I'm not saying that's the same for everybody. You know, John was saying before about the cyberpunk, you know, way of thinking about this. That's just so outside the way that I think, but that doesn't make it wrong. I suppose what it does is just open up a whole load of new questions I never thought I'd have to think about. And that's been the fantastic thing about working with Florence and doing the work that we've done, is all of a sudden, you know, in the past, I've been extremely reticent to even record performances at all. You know, if they have to be recorded, I'd much rather it's just a still image, because I'm so invested in the fact that people need to be there or they just don't get it. And so, you know, again, I think some of these things were what myself and Florence were trying to work out in the film that we made. Just, well, what is this new stuff that isn't even stuff that we're somehow connected on? So yeah, I'm in two minds.
Yeah, like Boris
Okay.
Grace called the internet.
Could I
Yeah, go on, Teresa.
sorry, could I just to follow up with what Nicola has shared, I would like to, you know, follow up a question with Lazarus and John. Well, because Nicholas and Florence, they are the artists which emphasize about human presence or physical touch. For two of you, you are more engaged with the digital world. So could I say that this time for the peer-to-peer project, is an online platform? Would that be, in any case, that could, you know, you find it, you know, so used or so easy for your own kind of artistic expression, or no problem at all? That's my first question, part one question. Part two question is, if next year the Okay. If if this time is no longer an online project, it's an offline project, how would you, for the kind of artwork that you present this time, how would you make it into a physical project? Yeah. So these are the two questions for Lazarus and John.
Yeah, I found it an enjoyable process. I think like connecting, I was working with an artist called Conky, and I found the ability to be able to connect via Zoom or email great, because like without this platform, we probably wouldn't have had a chance to meet. And definitely probably not had a chance to collaborate with each other. So I found it like incredibly beneficial and a great mode of communicating, I guess. In terms of what I would do differently, like I guess like my practice does involve, a big part of my practice is taking, say, these characters, these situations, and developing them in different mediums. So the character in that game also exists as a costume that I can wear. It also exists as a comic book, and it also exists as like video work. So I will make a mixture of life-size, I guess like a lot of the part of my practice is very focused on texture and like how things look and feel. But then also how that can then exist away from the physical space. Yeah, so I guess I would do that. I would explore more of that. I recently did a show for Castlefield Gallery where a lot of the characters and creatures existed as human size objects, sculptures in the space, but then they were also presented as digital characters in animations and film as well. So again, like I guess that idea of exploring ideas across multiple platforms and mediums. So yeah, I'd probably, if it was AFK, I would probably do a similar thing, as in working through a story, but with real life costume, something like that.
Thanks, John.
So maybe I will back to the digital and art problem first, and then I will talk about what I will do if there's a physical version of the performance. So I don't see that digitizations or an art and physical body movement or touch are like in the opposite side, because those are information to me. So the touch, the smells, or senses or sensory, they are informations. They are some trigger your neurons, and then you can feel something. So those are informations. Those are something you can we can understand. And but the bizarre situation now is the digital technology are not advanced enough to translate or transfer all the informations to between artists or the audience, or just between humans. So so nowadays we are so bizarre that we could not have like a silent Zoom or like a website that those are filled up with informations. So it's more like that we're back to like the 19th centuries, the early 19th centuries. Someone take out a camera and say that you can take a smile and take a pictures and something like that. What we are working on is more like a guy or magicians and take out a camera and want to make artworks that happens. So if I will have a chance to do a physical versions of my performance in Hong Kong or even UK, that means that the pandemic is over. So so I could communicate with people that and I thought that Zoom is just a way to build up community, like a digital community, and to engage people to communicate. So maybe I will build another platform like Zoom or like apps, like something like that, to engage people communicate physically, and then we can build up a community physically. So with the digital technology, and yeah, maybe that's what I will do.
Thanks, Lazarus. I just kind of, we've not got lots of time left, so I wanted to kind of bring the discussion back to language a little bit. And Florence, previously, you'd made this point that you felt like in your work at times you can use language not just as a tool, but as a kind of a medium in its own right. And I wonder if you could say a little bit about that.
Well, I try to look at language as not only as a verbal language, but like even within artists, different kinds of ways of treating the same medium becomes, when it's authentic to themselves, it becomes a unique language that could be different from everyone. So I try to look at language in that way. I think it's a tool is something that it's rigid, that helps you do something, but it doesn't transform. But then a medium sometimes also become a message. So it really depends on, like the same thing. It depends on how you use it. It could have the possibility of both. Yeah. So I guess that's the way I look at whether language sometimes becomes a tool or a medium.
Thank you. Interesting. Juliana, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, just as I was listening to you guys, because I'm not the artist myself, so I guess the way I look at technology or the intersection between technology as a language with contemporary art is more than I feel like there are two different languages. There's this language that's used in visual art and like contemporary artists like Florence, Nicola, and John and Lazarus. But then there's another set of language that's used by like digital artists, and they, and I feel like there isn't really the two languages that haven't met yet, because the whole digital art is still relatively new, especially with the NFT and stuff. And right now it seems to me that they're not really they're not very coherent. But I do feel like if we look into the future, there might be a point where those two languages can merge, and instead of being so different from each other. Yeah.
Thank you, Juliana. Nicola.
Yeah, Juliana, I think it's interesting what you said, because I think maybe we're still at the meeting point of languages being a knowledge and languages being an information. And knowledge and information are not the same thing. And they're starting to sort of overlap. And we are lucky or unlucky or whatever to be at that meeting point. But we've not fully gone from knowledge to information yet. They're still overlapping. It'd be brilliant to have a time machine to see what a world purely of information looks like. It's kind of impossible for us to grasp, because we're still half, one leg in the pool of knowledge and one leg in the pool of information. But maybe it's not really until we transition fully to information, whether that means we become kind of hybrid beings that are part technological, part human, or whether we just become technological and humanity as we know it disappears. That will be the point, I think, that we're heading towards. Maybe I'm catastrophizing, maybe not. Or it's sort of, yeah, I'm not sure, but it is making me think about the difference between the two.
Go on, Juliana.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it was a really good point of comparison between knowledge and information. I feel like if we think about, as a non-artist, my way of thinking about digital art is really through the huge amount of NFTs. A lot of the time, like contemporary art people, for the lack of better word, think of NFT as, in a sense, too direct and too simple. And I feel that is a very good comparison when you think about the difference between information and knowledge. Information is so accessible, it's instant, but knowledge is something that takes time and understanding that's much deeper than an instinct, you know, receiving of certain data.
So we've hit 10:40, and just what you guys have been saying now brings us quite nicely onto one of the questions that's appeared in the chat, which is from Mayuk Wong. And Mayuk asks, is digital work going to be the main form of art in the future, while the physical work becomes old-fashioned, antiquated? And Mayuk also asks, is it possible that AI is capable to make art, and there'll be no place for real artists in the future? I think that's the question. John, maybe we'll go to you. What do you think? What does the future hold, John?
I really don't see it as an either or. I think it's just another, for me, it's just another medium. For me, I feel like it's the same way as, say, when video art became the norm, people saying, is video art going to take over physical art? I just think it's another medium, and it's another way of expressing yourself. And the idea of like the medium holds the information, I don't personally agree with that. I think it's the practitioner or the idea behind it. So you might get a NFT, for example, that is very surface level, but then you might also get a painting which is very surface level. I don't think either one is necessarily worse than the other. I think it's just a different medium and a different mode of communicating. And I guess like NFT became so big because it's been the idea of how to monetize painting or sculpture has been understood for a long time, whereas that idea of how to monetize a digital thing that you could easily take a screenshot of hasn't necessarily been broken into how we can monetize that, as in not we, but as in like big art dealers, big, like that kind of capitalist machine, how it can monetize it. So I think there was this big excitement behind this idea of like, oh, we figured it out, we can do this NFT thing, and that's why it suddenly blew up. But I don't see that as being, I don't associate NFT with digital artwork. I see, digital artwork is not really a new thing. I think like maybe since the pandemic and lots of the ways of how we communicate and view artwork, we had to be pushed into these other arenas that have existed for like a long time, and people have been, I guess, like working within digital format for ages and ages. It's I don't see it at all as a new thing. I think NFT definitely, but I personally don't see it as a new thing, and I don't think it's either or. I think there's plenty of room for both to exist and both to mesh with each other or not. Yeah, that's my personal view on it.
One of the things I think is quite interesting that's been coming out of the conversation is these sort of different speeds of reception, different ways of kind of experiencing work. And it strikes me, maybe this is a little provocative, I don't know, but I kind of feel like the way we've talked about performance art and digital, there's maybe a kind of a similarity there, that they both happen in the moment, like they both happen fast, whereas maybe the more traditional art forms like painting and sculpture have a more kind of permanence, and maybe there's a different temporality there that engenders a more reflective kind of experience. I don't know, Nicola, would you agree with that?
I guess first of all, there's the difference between the kind of the making of the art and the doing of the art, if it's performative, and then its reception. So you know, one thing I'm aware of, even when doing physical performances in a gallery or any other space, is that I might be there for ages doing it, but someone might only come and look for 5 seconds. and you know, that's kind of how lots of people approach art, even in a gallery. You know, and it's a well-known fact, isn't it, that the average amount of time someone will spend in front of an artwork is really, really quick. And I'm sure that that's a reflection of the digital world on art every day, because once upon a time it would have been a longer period of time that you would spend with any artwork. I was just thinking then, as you were speaking, Gas, when I saw the first edit of the film that Florence and I had made, I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, it's half an hour long. I was really worried about it, because I thought that's really, really long to expect someone to kind of sit at a screen. Like, we're used to doing it in the cinema, aren't we? But I'm well aware that I will quite often go into a gallery that's got a screen and be really judgmental really quickly about how long I want to stay with it. But actually, when I just thought, no, hang on, calm down, and I saw the way that it unfolded, actually, I was really surprised to find that digital medium slowed me down as a viewer, and I got into the rhythm of what was happening on the screen. Now, maybe that's just me and I'm not used to watching digital work in that way, or it's not necessarily what I gravitate towards, but I found it really interesting that the digital result of our performance, watching it back, slowed me down, which is not what I'm used to from being online, scrolling on a device. It's all quick. So something quite odd happened to me there, and it needs more exploration, I think. And it's, you know, it's potential. It's got potential for further works, I think.
Thank you, Nicola. Juliana, I'll come to you in just a second, but we've got another question in the chat, which is from Chloe Tam, who points out that there's not a lot of painting and sculpture in the peer-to-peer program. And she asks, is that kind of intentional, or does it reflect the state of art at the moment? So I'll just put that out there, but Juliana, what were you going to say?
Sorry, I was just touching my face. I didn't raise my hand.
Oh, right. Okay. No worries. Well, would anyone like to speak to the question from Chloe? I mean, I guess it is part of the nature of the platform, you know, the intention with peer-to-peer. I think Lindsay's nodding. Lindsay, you want to jump in?
Well, I think that question is probably sort of more aimed in my direction. And yes, the peer-to-peer platform, it is meant to be digital, and it is very much about wanting to have that digital exchange between artists in 2 different places. And the reason, I think, as Lazarus said, it started off with COVID. When we did the first edition. The second edition, COVID's still with us, so travel hasn't been possible. But actually, you know, we need to think beyond COVID and think about the world and the climate emergency. And we can't continue with how we've, you know, worked in the past. I mean, you know, I was listening to what Florence and Nicola were saying, and I think everybody's mentioned the word community and wanting to be together, and that idea of spending time with people, those silent moments Nicola mentioned. You know, that sort of sharing meals, all of that kind of stuff, I think is so important. But how do we do that internationally without destroying the planet? Because if we carry on doing all that, we won't be able to do it at all. So this is a conundrum for us, and I think for the peer-to-peer platform going forward, how do we work internationally without traveling, without destroying the planet? So I don't know whether that's really answered your question, Chloe, but for peer-to-peer, this absolutely is digital. And sort of going back to some of the questions that have come up about sort of, you know, artworks and collecting. I mean, you know, I'm responsible for a museum collection, and sort of that idea, is digital going to take over? No, I completely agree with everything John said. It is absolutely, it's a different medium. It was interesting hearing Nicola talking about, you know, how you slowed down and when you watch your own sort of work, and how you can walk past things in a museum or an art gallery sort of context if it's video. But then somebody else said earlier, you do that with paintings. I think actually, Nicola, you might have said that, because there is a statistic, isn't it, how quickly people move past paintings. So with any artwork, a viewer makes a decision whether they're going to spend time and invest in it. And I don't think that matters whether it's a painting, a sculpture, or a video. Sorry, I've gone off
no, that's
I'm trying to answer all these questions, but the digital is absolutely the heart of peer-to-peer.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Lindsay. And I think like for Teresa and I and the other members of Hong Kong Arts Centre, when we were talking about what we wanted to do, you know, we knew we wanted to get something on the website, but we also were really interested to see how the physical and the digital could kind of speak to each other, and that's why we decided to have the two events. And we kind of had this idea that the artists that would be present in Manchester could somehow be there physically, sort of standing in for the artists that weren't there, that were in Hong Kong, and vice versa, that they could sort of embody the artists that were missing. It's maybe too soon to say, but I wonder if anyone has any thoughts about how sort of successful or not that was as an idea. I don't know, Lazarus, if you wanted to say something about that.
So maybe I could respond to the previous questions about the AI. Is it possible to replace a real artist? So I think if we agreed on there's someone, the only one human could be the master of art, and then we could be agreed on these questions, that there will be someone or some AI or some individuals that could capable on any art form, that all art form, or maybe he could do painting, digital artwork, and then he could do, or she could do like performing it in one person. And then we could say that, oh, maybe there is a room that it is possible. But if we do not agree on that, there is no possibility that someone or some AI could replace a new real artist, because it's just another medium. If you give an AI tool, like the performance that I put on, actually use some AI engine behind to predict my mouth motions to help me to translate one audio file, and then to have a facial recognition, so to have the facial expressions that I could tune, and I could do my performance with my avatar. So it's just like giving me a superpower to do a performance. So that's what AI tools nowadays. So if you give an AI tool to ordinary people, I just saw a YouTube video yesterday, and there's a YouTuber testing on if you give a Mid-Journey or Dawo to ordinary people, or some designer, a person that with art training, with art sense, what it will be. And they put off like a voting event online. So the result is really interesting, that the artists still win, still have the competition, and he still perform art, but with a really fast pace. That is the problem. Maybe the AI tool will bring capitalism into the art making process. You have to be fast and fast and fast and fast. You have to make your work complex and more complex and then more complex. It's more like it's like the ego inside the real artist become more and more and more with all the AI tools that you could have and you could use later on. So that is my response to that question.
Thank you,
could I
Leslie.
say, yeah, could I, say something, after what Glass said, because, we and Castlefield, we initiate, the way of being together. I think one of the things that we really would like to explore at the very beginning is because one of our program is called spoken words. So at the very beginning, language, it's one of the areas that we would like to talk about, and we briefly mentioned how could we incorporate the medium of language into the art world practice. And I think we were very surprised in how the artists that we involve, that different interpretation of language. Talking about, further to what Lindsay said, I would say P2P, for the last few years is about online. The reason why I'm asking Lazarus and John about if they would got the chance to make it in a physical event, how would that be? It's because I I mean, our next possible stage will be about what we always said, hybrid platform, including both online and offline. But frankly speaking, well, we briefly talked about the difficulty of curating an online art experience. But for me, how to presenting or how to curating a hybrid art experience is also, you know, a challenge as well, because but again, it seems this is you know, this is the reality now, because for one reason or another, basically our life, it's use all these kind of communication, and this is part of our life. And I kind of thought, and I'm interested that because that require, because we talked about the hybrid art experience, that require different sets of narrative, or you know, how we take how we take the audience to experience the whole story world or whatever. So yeah, I mean, that could be a challenge, but at the same time, that could be an exciting time for both artist, curator, and audience to encounter now.
Thank you, Teresa. So
Yes.
we're nearly at the very end. Does anyone have any last sort of closing remarks? Silence.
Yeah.
Go on, Nicola.
Very precious.
Just
Yeah.
quickly, very quickly, just going back to that question of AI and what will happen to art. I think if at some point we do cross over from the world of knowledge to the world of information, categories such as art kind of have to disappear, because, you know, we're still in the categories of a kind of world of knowledge, you know, disciplines. You know, in the Western world, we might have said that, you know, Francis Bacon organized knowledge from philosophy downwards into languages and mathematics and science and etc. And we still have one foot in those disciplines. But what the world of information allows us to do is completely mangle all of that. So it just becomes this big soup of everything all together. And so the disciplines sort of break down. However, I suspect if all those disciplines break down, that is a long, long time in the future, and we probably won't live to see it. But it seems to be the direction that we're headed, which is why we're asking these questions. All of a sudden, art will become incredibly precious to us, because things that are about to disappear always do seem precious. So, you know, the very fact that we're asking that question, is AI going to take over art? That's both a scary and a glorious moment. I'll leave it there.
Anyone else? Any last words? Florence.
Just very short remark, also following Nicholas. I think art is so much about the reflection or the documentation of humanity, and then also recently, in the recent years, there's also debates on whether or not very advanced AI have consciousness, or does it reflect some kind of human element to it. So I guess it's a question of whether, like, where would humanity go with art as a medium to carry it, or like, does it move on to AI, does it move on to digital, or like, do we consider the kind of consciousness that we perceive from the conscious point of view? Is this really the consciousness that we are familiar with? I think it's perhaps just a switch of a mentality to how to understand it. So yeah, it's just a quick remark.
John, I don't know if you want to say any last things.
I'm going to be a bit rude and say we do need to wrap up. So if you want
No
to say
problem.
really
No
quick.
problem. John's giving a big thumbs up. Say by the Lindsay Taylor bell.
But thank you, Gas. Thank you, everybody. Gas, Nicola, Florence, John, Lazarus, Juliana, and Teresa. kind of what a fantastic way to end our symposium. Some really fantastic discussion points and quite profound things to think about. So thank you all. It's my job to wrap up. So to let everybody know, the recording of this session will be uploaded onto the website later today, and please do share it with your networks. As I said, this is the final live session for Peer-to-Peer UK Hong Kong 2022. However, tomorrow there will be a memoir published on the website. This includes reflections and responses from many of the participants in the peer-to-peer, both artists and organisations, and has been edited by Yang Young and designed by Declan Connolly, so a big thank you to both of them. The website will remain live, and I encourage you to take time to browse all the different projects that have evolved out of the Peer-to-Peer UK Hong Kong 2022 programme. There are lots of fantastic artists from both places to discover, and some really quite wonderful and innovative approaches to international exchange, all without travelling. And all the symposium sessions have been uploaded, so you can watch them at your leisure. I'd like to thank all the partners and all the artists for participating, and of course our wonderful team for pulling together and making this festival run so smoothly. Thanks to Seb, Clara and Gum, our producers, and a massive thank you to Steve Wade, our technical manager, without whom this festival would simply not have been possible. Thanks also to Ying Kwok for her input and enthusiasm, and of course to Sarah Fisher, my co-organiser. And thank you again to Arts Council England for their support and believing in the peer-to-peer model. We will be looking at further ways to share peer-to-peer UK Hong Kong and welcome any suggestions or proposals. And I was really interested in what Teresa was just saying about hybrid models, and I think there's definitely something to explore there. Everyone today will receive an evaluation form, and I know it's Saturday and evaluation is a chore. However, it's a really quick and simple form, and the more responses we get, the more likely we're able to do more work like this in the future. So please do take the time to fill those in. So finally, thank you for attending today, and goodbye from me and the rest of the peer-to-peer team. Thank you. Bye-bye.